Alright, in this lesson we're going to go over how to divide fractions. First we're just going to start kind of talking about division in general. Say I'm dividing 12. 12 divided by 3. I might start out with like 12 marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can see I kind of group them together just for the sake of this. You'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see if I put them in groups of 3, there's 4 equal groups. So 12 divided by 3 equals 4. It's the same exact thing that we need to do with fractions. It just looks different because we're doing it fractions. So let's come on over here and we're going to look at an example where we are dividing some fractions and some whole numbers. Let's take example this first one here. 2 and 2 divided by 1/2. So in this example, you have 2 wholes. Let's say we have 2 whole pizzas, right? And then we're going to split them into half. Well, how many halves are there in 2 wholes? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would equal 4. So 2 divided by half would equal 4. And then when we kind of reverse that, think 1/2 divided by 2, it's going to be different. So in this case, you have a half. So when I draw this picture of this one, and say I draw like the pizzas again, I draw this, but I only have half. That's all I start with. And then I think divided that by 2. Okay, there's 2 ways to think about this. I can think of, well, what portion of 2 wholes does this make up? So you kind of have these dots. You have like this dot, like, oh, this would be, this one's shaded. That's the half I have. And then you have a whole other hole. So it'd be 1 piece, and then of these 2 holes, it'd be 1/4 would be shaded in. The other way to think about that is you have your half of a pizza, right? You can divide that into 2 equal parts. Okay, 2. Well, one of those parts would be 1/4, because if I had the rest of the pizza here, 1/4 of the pizza. Either way, you get 1/4, however you think about it, but 1/2 divided by 2 equals 1/4. So here we're going to work on dividing a fraction by a fraction. We're going to look at dividing 3/2 divided by 1/4. The way I look at that is I just kind of would build the 3/2 and then look at how many groups of 1/4 I can get out of those halves. So let me kind of come over here to the side and draw 3/2. So I'd start out with 3/2. Say this is a whole, split it in half, there's 2 halves. And then here's another whole, split it in half. So we're kind of looking here at, 1, 2, 3/2. And then we want to divide them by, figure out how many 1/4 are in those. When we think about 1/4, though, we got to think back to the original whole. So like, this is the whole, so this would be 1/4, this would be 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And then down here, 1/4, 2/4. So ultimately, if I look at how many 1/4 can fit into 3/2, I'm sitting here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the answer for our first problem here would be that 3/2 divided by 1/4 would equal 6. And now let's go down and look at this next one. 3 divided by 3/4. So in this case, we're going to have, say, let's do the rectangles again. 1, 2, 3. And you're like, how many 3/4 can fit in there? Well, we're going to split each of these holes into fourths. So like fourths, fourths, fourths. Oops. And we want to kind of section this off into groups of 3/4. So this would be 1, 2, 3. This would be 1 group of 3/4. 1, 2, 3. This would be 2 groups of 3/4. 1, 2, 3. This would be 3 groups of 3/4. 1, 2, 3. This works out. So it's exactly 4 groups of 3/4. So your answer would be 4. 3 divided by 3/4 equals 4. Now, of course, that can kind of be confusing and hard. I personally don't quite, I get how the pictures work now that I know the standard algorithm, but there's a standard like way to do this. It just kind of involves the development of understanding exactly what division is and how you can work with it. So we have 5/8 divided by 3/4. Really what this means is you have 5/8 over 3/4. So you actually have like two fractions. Like, well, that's like a fraction is a numerator and a fraction is a denominator. Well, you know what I can do to do this? I'm going to multiply this fraction by 1. But I'm going to do a special form of 1. That special form of 1 is going to be what we call the multiplicative inverse. So that means that on the denominator, I want to get rid of this. To get rid of this denominator, if I multiply it by 4 over 3, it'll equal 1. Because 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 over 12 is 1. So my denominator is going to end up equaling 1, meaning that my answer will just be my numerator. So all I have to do is multiply this by 4 over 3. And 5 times 4 is 20. And 8 times 3 is 24. So I get the fraction of 20/24, which I can then simplify. The answer is actually 20/24 over 12/12, which equals 1. So it's 20/24 over 1, which really just equals 20 over 24. I can simplify that by dividing by, let's start with 4. We can divide by 4. So this would be 5. 20 divided by 4 is 5, and 24 divided by 4 is 6. So the answer is 5, 6. So when I come back to my original problem, 5/8 divided by 3/4 equals 5, 6. This seems like it might sound a little complicated, but it's basically if you take the multiplicative inverse, or otherwise known as the reciprocal, and multiply by that instead of dividing, you end up with the actual quotient. I'm going to go back, and now I'm just going to show you kind of again on this one here. Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to do 3/2 divided by 1/4 using this method here. So basically what you do is you're going to get rid of the division, and you're going to do 3/2, that stays the same, times, and just reduce the reciprocal. Flip the 1/4 upside down. 4 over 1. 3/2 times 4 over 1. Well, I can actually cross cancel, like we talked on the other lesson. 2 goes into 2 once, so let's erase that. Okay, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. 3 times 2 here would equal 6, and 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer is 6, which, if you look back, that was the same answer we got. Just a little bit of a faster way to get there, understanding how multiplication, division, and fractions relate to each other. Just to finally want to review the vocabulary here we talked about. So you have the reciprocal. Reciprocal means that if I have a fraction, and that fraction is, say, a over b, well, the reciprocal would just be flipping upside down. So you just kind of flip it, and that would be b over a. And the reciprocal is what we use for the multiplicative inverse property. Multiplicative inverse property, say you have a fraction a over b, and I multiply that by b over a, my product is going to be 1. We say you have 2/3 times 3 over 2. Well, 2 times 3 equals 6. 3 times 2 equals 6, and 6/6 would equal 1. So no matter what the numerator and denominator are, you're going to end up with 1. And then finally, the multiplicative inverse it's just basically like saying reciprocal. It means that you can basically flip a fraction upside down to multiply it and get 1. So again, we're just thinking about this thing, a over b times b over a equals 1. And these are just words you should know that'll help you understand how to divide fractions, which ultimately you basically don't actually divide. You simply multiply by the reciprocal, and that's how you divide fractions.